Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another and the final edition of the virtual Beaver State Tour. I'm Mike Parker, and it's been a real pleasure to interact with you in this unique way, unprecedented for me. Veteran Zoomers, it's nothing new to you, but for me in this whole experience, it's been eye-opening. I've learned a lot, and I've certainly enjoyed the methodology of the Beaver State Tour this year. It may stay in some way, shape, or form, somewhat like this in the future, in that we haven't been able to get out physically as we have on our state tours in the past. But in some ways, we've been able to connect with a lot more of you in this unique time, in this unique way. And before we go any further, I want to thank some people who've made this state tour possible, because I know we're going to get very busy with our guests, coaches, and some pop-in guests, and that's been a delightful part of these last couple of weeks, and getting to interact with so many Oregon State greats, past and present, and coaches. But the only way that we've had a state tour possible in this format, so many people have worked very hard behind the scenes. First of all, thanks to Rory Carlo, who is an assistant athletic director for marketing and fan engagement. Rory, thank you for your hard work in putting all of this together and getting all of us together for these special events. So Rory, thank you. And then the academic technology team have worked tirelessly here to make sure this is all up and going and ready, including Brendan Buckner, Christina Case, Derek O'Neill, Jeff Peterson, and the entire athletics communications staff, led by Steve Fank and all of his staff, have put together information, been in contact with special guests and coaches, and helped me a tremendous amount in being able to conduct these virtual Beaver State tours. So great job, everybody, and thank you for letting me be a small part of it. It's been a lot of fun, and we close out with another, what I think will be a very interesting hour with two coaches and two special guests along the way. Let's get started with the veteran of tonight's coaches, and then we'll bring in the newest hire at Oregon State from a head coaching standpoint. So excited to get to interact and get to know him a little bit better tonight in just a moment. But getting ready for his fifth season as the head coach for Oregon State volleyball after 11 seasons as an assistant, so indeed a seasoned veteran. It's a pleasure to welcome volleyball coach Mark Barnard in tonight. Coach Barnard, thanks for taking time. Welcome to the final edition of the virtual Beaver State Tour. How are you doing, and how are you handling these last 10 weeks?
Well, thank you for having me on. One, this is my, might be, as you term, veteran coach, but this is my first rookie experience at a Zoom virtual state tour, so that's something that's new. So
yes, it is.
Things never are always new things, so that's a good learning exercise. It's just been a really interesting time for us, like everybody. And I think you get to, you go through an initial stage where, okay, this is a little different. There's a few weeks off work and a few weeks off school, through to now where you go, man, I wonder when we're going to start again, and if we do, and what does it look like? And so I think everyone's dealing with that in some form or other. And, so really it's just one of those great lessons in life of, hey, I can't control this, so I should worry about the stuff I can. Even though, we preach that to our athletes all the time, but I think as coaches, we're at the moment where I guess we're worrying about things in regard to starting the season, how the student athletes are, their academics, all the bits and pieces.
Well, we have a lot of time to explore specifically your student athletes, how you're working with them as a staff. Your staff has had some adjustments to it. We'll talk about that as well as we go. Through all of this, and I find this fascinating in its own right, maybe never a hire quite like this in the history of Oregon State University athletics, announced on Monday, March 30th of 2020, the new wrestling coach at Oregon State University, Chris Pendleton. Chris, welcome into your first ever virtual Beaver State tour. We had you on our local radio show a while back, but it's nice to see you, nice to meet you. It's great to have you in Corvallis. Welcome to Oregon State and Beaver Nation. I know you're excited about the days ahead, but the hiring process, it went well, but it was unusual, wasn't it? Welcome to Oregon State.
Yeah, it's been probably the most unique start to a head coaching career. But, it's kind of crazy. You said March 30th. I felt like I've had this job for about 4 months. And I'm finally in Corvallis. Got to had a week of sunshine. So I was really excited about that. And I love being out here already.
Chris, tell us a little bit. We want to talk to you about your style, your philosophy, your own great career at Oklahoma State, and your great success as a recruiter and coach at Arizona State, Wyoming, and other stops. But the process itself, the unique process we've already sort of touched on and alluded to, how did it all go for you, and to be, in a sense, hired without ever really having the in-person visit, but like we're doing now, sort of in this Zoom world? Take us through the process, if you would, a little bit, how you ended up at Oregon State.
The process of hiring?
Yes.
Yeah. Right after our team won the Pac-12 championships, I had a phone call from Dan Bartholomew, and he had requested that we go and have breakfast with Scott at the NCAA championships in a couple weeks. And we had it scheduled for a 9 a.m. breakfast. And immediately I was excited. Like I've said in a couple other interviews, Oregon State's been a job that I've coveted from time when I was an athlete. In 1999, we used to come out and wrestle Oregon State and Oregon, and I always just loved the history and tradition. Obviously loved the colors because I'm an Oklahoma State alum, so it was just nice and easy to kind of slide back into the orange and black. But the world changed. Like every coach in the country, we all got phones and emails from our bosses saying, we're done. No athletics right now. We're pausing. And for me, it kind of, I was really excited about the opportunity. So talking with Dan, he asked me if I would be comfortable doing virtual interviews. And I told him for sure. And so I got to meet with him and Scott in about an hour, just a one-on-one Zoom call at the beginning, and found out I was a finalist. And then had to do probably one of the hardest marathons. I think the interview process started around 9 a.m. and ended at 5 p.m. of just straight meeting people. I had my notes over here, my coffee over here, had the dogs locked outside, and had threatened everybody that I knew not to come over to my house because I had a life-changing opportunity. And finally, when I got off the phone, I was exhausted. I lay down on the couch, and I got a phone call the next morning from my college coach, John Smith, and he asked me if I was ready for my life to change. He thought I was going to be getting the Oregon State job. And then I had a couple other people, because I think Scott was calling and doing a little bit more extra research, calling a lot of my references and people that knew me, the Wyoming AD. They were very thorough, and all of them kind of reached out to me and told me I had the Oregon State job. So then I had to basically sit at home just waiting. And then Sunday morning, I just woke up and said, I can't wait all day by the phone. So I was making breakfast and went out in my backyard and was sitting there, and Scott called me and offered me the job, and my life's been moving at a sprint ever since.
Thank you for recounting that, Chris. That's a great story. After, I've been hearing about the term that students are dealing with and student athletes and everyone, Zoom fatigue. You had one big Zoom fatigue in one day then when you went through all of those interviews with all the different personalities and different people on the committee, and Jackie Bruns and Dan and all of them, Dan Bartholomew, everybody on the committee did such a great and thorough job. But when you fell back exhausted, did you feel like you hit it? I mean, did you think, hey, that was okay, it was exhausting, but did you feel like, hey, I think I communicated well? You must have, but did you feel good about it when you collapsed on the bed?
No, I thought I botched it. I was like, I did a horrible job. Everybody's just staring at me. Yeah, all truthfulness, though, it was nerve-wracking, but as I was going through the process, it became a little bit easier to communicate a vision that you believe in. And I think people were able to kind of understand that this isn't something that I just say, it's something that I believe in, the direction of the program and my excitement about leading it. When I got to talk to Dan and I got to talk to Scott, and I heard about their vision for the future of Oregon State athletics and the holistic development of student athletes and preparing kids not just for athletics but for life. I mean, it's exactly what I believed in. We did an exercise at ASU a couple years ago where each coach had to write out their mission statement. And one of the things I always tell my athletes is when you have a goal, go research, find out who's done it already. So I had a goal. I had to write a mission statement. So I researched the top 5 coaches that I could think of. Gino Periano, Phil Jackson, Vince Lombardi, Mike Krzyzewski, John Wooden. And I looked at all their mission statements, and nowhere in the mission statement did it talk about winning championships or being the best in the world. It was all about being the best person you could be and developing the athlete. And I felt really at peace when I got to read the Oregon State mission statement and knew that that's what I believed in too. So it was kind of a good match with everything.
Chris, what you say, and I know when we welcome a special pop-in guest here in a few minutes who was on the committee and one of the greats ever at Oregon State.
And that's the toughest questions.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But the philosophy, the mesh, the tradition at Oregon State, as you know, and know it well, and diving into it even more, probably learning even more about it. But Dale Thomas, from 1957, through 1990, that what you just articulated about, it's not just about winning championships. That's the thing that Greg said, and it sounds like the people that make huge impacts in life, such as Dale did on so many, and you've experienced that from your coaches. If winning championships is the only goal or the only thing, you don't even get to the life impacting parts. And Dale, is one of the best ever at that at Oregon State. So that philosophy meshes with his too.
Mm-hmm. And getting to know people from Dale's era, the athletes from Dale's era, has really made it just everything just more concrete for what I believe in. I think probably almost every wrestler from that era in some way, shape, or form has reached out to me to congratulate me and to give advice and input and best wishes on the direction of the program. And those are people that are, in their 60s, 70s now. But that coach had such an impact on their lives, and the program had such an impact on their lives. It made me start to think about what's going to be my legacy. Where are my athletes going to be in 30 years? Are they still going to be grateful for the opportunity that Oregon State gave them? Did Oregon State help them become better people? And it's like you said, I mean, he's one of the best of all time. And it's been very telling to see his legacy.
I want to bring Coach Barnard in just to kind of reflect a little bit on what you've been hearing, Coach, and your own philosophy. We're going to welcome one of your current players in a little bit later as a pop-in guest. But I know you and Chris in this weird world haven't been able to have in-person coaches meetings and all that, so you kind of met him tonight virtually as well. But I'm sure you're impressed with what you're hearing, and what he says about developing people is what you're all about in your program too.
Well, if you do the simple math, there's 330 Division I teams. And in the last 4 years, 3 coaches, because one coach won twice, have won a national championship. There's about 1,000 coaches in Division I. So that's 997 unhappy coaches. So if you're all about just national championships, then what are you? 0.03%. So you've got to be bigger than that. You've got to be about the development of the person academically, socially, because they're in this such a malleable phase of their life where you can still teach them things, and they, for the most part, listen to you. And so, I think you need to take advantage of that, because let's face it, the number of people that go on from college in wrestling and in volleyball to make, enormous salaries in that sport is pretty small. So, what are we really preparing them for? Yeah, it's great to win. And I'm not going to say I'd rather lose and develop the people necessarily, but the picture is so much bigger than a national championship.
We're going to bring in a national champion in just a second, but just one other quick thing, Mark, before we bring in a legend, and just so honored to have him on this virtual Beaver State Tour. Just a quick thought, as you heard Coach Pendleton reflecting on his, getting the head coaching job. Now, you had been here quite a while, but it still must have been thrilling for you. The process was different. You'd been an assistant for 11 years, but when you became the head coach of this program at Oregon State, what did that mean to you?
It was I was very lucky that the 11 years I had here under Terry Liskevich was as good an education I would have, because I was the national head coach in Australia. So I guess took a step backwards for want of a better term. But it was a great learning experience for me. And, it was something that, like Chris had talked about, coveting a job, that was, exactly what I wanted to do. And you realize things when you become a head coach too. It's a little bit harder, and people don't come into your office as frequently as they used to. But I think there's a lot of pride in being a head coach at Oregon State University, and there's so much that I think that we can impact on their lives. And you got to take it seriously, because it matters, and it matters to the athletes, it matters to their parents and families, and to the Beaver faithful. And so we got to be good stewards for the university and for our programs, and I'm aware of that. And hey, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing than what I'm doing now.
Thank you, Coach. We'll come back to you in a little bit and visit with one of your current student athletes as well from nearby Philomath. It is an honor to welcome in a Hall of Famer in virtually every Hall of Fame in the sport, and certainly our Hall of Fame, the state of Oregon Hall of Fame, 3-time All-American, 2-time NCAA champ. It is an honor to welcome in Greg Strobel tonight to our virtual Beaver State Tour. Greg, good evening. Thanks for taking time for us. How are you tonight? And just what are your thoughts about being in here with Coach Pendleton and the new era getting underway at Oregon State?
I'll tell you what, I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be a part of the program. I even wore my Oregon State shirt, as you can see.
Good.
I got out of the closet and went, I'm a Beaver again, after spending a lot of time at Lehigh University. And what's interesting is today in the mail, I got this article. I don't know if you can see that.
I think I may have seen it recently in researching about you.
Yeah.
That's a good article. That's
Carrie Eggers just sent me this. It arrived today. It's like so cool.
Excellent.
January 10th, 1974. So it's like I said, man, my kids and my grandkids are going to enjoy reading that article. But I was so proud and so happy to be a part of the committee that selected, Chris Pendleton to be the new head coach. I think we had 4 really good quality finalists, and we finished that 3rd interview, and I said, man, we got the guy. And then Chris came up and he interviewed and went, this is the guy. And I said, he's got so much talent. There's so much upside to him. It's what Oregon State needs. And I think about 10 minutes after that final call, Chris Barnes called me and said, what do you think? And I said, well, you could go with either one of these guys, but I think Chris is the man. He's the guy that can bring Oregon State back to where we want Oregon State to be. And I think there's a great following for Oregon State, a lot of enthusiasm with Oregon State. And Chris, I really like what you've already talked about, the winning and losing thing. Dale Thomas always told us the winning and losing will take care of itself. And you got to like it tough, not just kind of tough. And that pretty much summarizes Dale Thomas. You got to like it tough, not just kind of tough. And so I think you're on the right track. I think what I hear from you is the right philosophy. And anything I can do to help you, I will.
Chris,
Well,
any
thank you,
reaction to that, to what Greg said?
Well, obviously, Greg and I go back a long time. The Lehigh teams and Oklahoma State teams, we used to battle. We used to have some really good battles. And funny side note, we don't have to bring up any of the names, but out of the 4 finalists, 2 of them are some of my best friends in the world. One of them I lived together all throughout college. So it definitely made our group conversations on our Oklahoma State alumni group kind of funny. We could always tell who was interviewing at what time because that guy would disappear. So there was no friendships hurt, but I'm not gonna lie, I disappeared from the group chat for about 3 days. So it's good to hear that story.
Chris, as competitive as that was, were your friends close enough? You won that competition, and you got the job. Did they reach out to you, I hope, and say, hey, well done, congratulations? Was it hard? If it had gone the other way, would that have been hard for you to do, or are you guys still brothers in the sport and they all wish you well?
No, they were because they were finalists. They were the first people that found out, and they were the first people that called me. Like Coach Strobel said, there's things that are just bigger in life than wrestling, and the camaraderie that the sport breeds, and the true brotherhood. I mean, you're literally bleeding on the mat with each other. So we all wish each other well. We do a rotating vacation where one person hosts every year, and we've been all over the country. We were at North Carolina with Coleman Scott. We were last summer at Oklahoma State with Zach Esposito. So now they're excited about me hosting because I've been sending them pictures, and they're like, well,
good.
We're going to go out there and see Corvallis.
Nice. Hey, Greg, tell us a little bit. When you said you like the candidates, and after the 3rd interview, we've got our guy, then along comes Chris. What was it just an overall feel? Were there some specific things that he said, just the whole package of, hey, this is the guy? I mean, what was it? What was persuasive about what he said in that process that won you over and ultimately helped him get the job?
Well, I've known Chris as an athlete at Oklahoma State. He wrestled several of my guys. Some of them beat him, some of them lost to him. Right, Chris? So, at the interview, I found out stuff about your background, Chris, that I didn't know. I didn't know that you're traveled all over the country and all those kind of things. I knew you were from California. But when I heard your background info, I thought that's really impressive. And the homework you did on Oregon State and what Oregon State needs really resonated with me. So that was one factor. The other factor is the West Coast, California, Oregon. You're a West Coast kind of guy. You're a couple-time national champion. You have a lot of credibility with that. And, I was the chairman of the committee that selected you for several international coaching assignments. So I already know your upside in terms of being an up and coming international kind of coach. So you have a good feel for the freestyle and the Greco and the international stuff. You have a good feel for what the West Coast needs. And I just, through that whole interview process, I kind of got this sense of this is the job you want. And that's what you're looking for when you interview somebody. Why do you want this job? And what are you going to do with this job? And I really heard that through that interview process. So that's what sold me on you.
Greg, I want to stay with you for a moment. When you heard all of that, and I know other opportunities that come and for this rising star in the coaching profession, but he was waiting for something that he really wanted. And this Oregon State thing has intrigued him for a long time. When you say you knew he was what Oregon State needs, what would you define that? What does the program need right now, and how does Chris Pendleton address that?
I think a high-profile athlete, which he is bringing in with IMAR, with Isaiah Martinez as an assistant coach. Chris Pendleton is a 2-time national champion, so he's proven he can do it. I think, Chris, the 4 years you were at Oklahoma State, you guys won the title 4 times in a row. Is that right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
a really impressive resume. So Chris is instantly recognized around the United States as a top-notch athlete. He's also, and the other part of this that really comes into play, he was at Oklahoma State as a graduate assistant. Then he goes to Wyoming. They were nothing before he arrived. While he was there, they got really good. When he left, they weren't quite so good. Arizona State, Zeke Jones, good coach, know him well. They were okay. Pendleton arrives, boom. All of a sudden, he recruits in some really good guys. And now all of a sudden, they are on the national picture. So there's a common denominator there. Who is that guy that keeps going to Wyoming, then to Arizona State, and makes that program good? I think it's Chris Pendleton. He's the guy that is going to raise it to a new level. So unfortunately for Arizona State, which I have a good affinity to also, Oregon State gets the benefit here. Oregon State has Chris Pendleton. And Chris, it's your job to do the job here. And so we're excited about you being here, and I'm excited about helping. And I think you're going to find that from a lot of Oregon State alumni.
Thank you for that, Greg. I want to get back to you and hear a couple of Dale Thomas stories, one of the more intriguing figures this state has ever known. And I knew you knew the great man well. So I want to get a couple of those things from you. But back to Chris Pendleton for a moment. Chris, I understand, I just was informed that your new hire, at least Isaiah Martinez, is on tonight. He's watching this virtual state tour, just referenced by Coach Strobel. And you also made another hire of Nate Engel, also knows the territory well, coming from Stanford. So maybe if you could talk about those two hires this week, as well as just your own overall philosophy when you feel like you can address what Oregon State needs, how you and your staff will go about that.
Well, first off, I think I made a mistake. I should definitely have hired Coach Strobel as my recruiter, because I need him to tell every kid in the country that he is making me blush a little bit. And yes, Nate and Isaiah are on the call. They are just like I am. We have a deep amount of gratitude right now for wrestling, for Oregon State, and the position that is putting our families in and being a part of this community. I mean, the call last week was just unreal. Just the amount of support. I know they're already getting their phones blown up. I'm pretty sure it's Coach Strobel that is leaking our cell phone numbers to everybody. Somebody's doing it, but it's something I underestimated. And I kind of try to prepare them for there's a lot of people that are backing this program. There's a lot of people that are dedicated to this. And I can tell you, since I hired those guys, there's been absolutely zero doubt in my mind that I made 100% choice. They're fantastic men. They're men of character. They're men that through this process of hiring assistant coaches, I took my time, knew what I wanted, knew what I needed, and I really just am just blessed to have these guys on staff. I'll kind of go through them. First, our older guy, Nate Engel, he has a beard about, now you can't even see my bottom hand, but almost down to his knees right now. It's his quarantine beard. Him and his wife, Michaela, are moving to Corvallis from Palo Alto and Stanford. They're expecting twin boys, so I hired him as a recruiter, and he's already working on it. He's got me 2 commits right out of the gate. Nate and I, like Coach Strobel said, we both are active in the USA Wrestling movement. Nate just got a USA Wrestling Coach of the Year for Greco-Roman. He's been on countless world teams as far as coaching men, women, Greco, freestyle. We will have a program that is inclusive of everybody. We want to give the opportunity to anyone, because that's what wrestling, the deep down in its core, that's what it is. Everybody does it. At some point in your life, you have wrestled. Whether you remember it or not, you have wrestled. At 3 years old, you've wrestled sometime. And he's one of the hardest working men I've ever been around. I'm jumping around, but Nate, Michaela and I went out to a dinner in Estonia last fall. And I remember sitting at that dinner just being like, I want to work with this guy one day. This guy is awesome. And the feeling was reciprocated. And you know, it was one of the deals where I got to talk to him, offer him the job. And, you know, in the volunteer position at Stanford, there's limitations on what you can do recruiting. This guy's a recruiter. He is a recruiter. I think he missed being on the phone recruiting because I've been blown away already. He's sending me text after text where now my competitive nature kicks in where I feel lazy. And so now I have to start working harder. Isaiah Martinez, Imar, like Coach Strobel said, he is a name-recognized athlete. He's one of the best in the world. He has gone toe-to-toe with the best in the world, and a lot of times comes out on top. 4-time NCAA finalist, 2-time national champ. But the funny part of this is he's from my same hometown. He grew up in Lemoore, California with me. There was a big age gap where he was good friends with my baby brother, the baby. So when I was in high school, they were the little annoying kids in the youth club that were running around the room, you know, that you couldn't get your workouts in, or these little kids are driving you nuts. But I gotta say, just being able to get older and take that step back. I've always been proud of watching Isaiah develop through life. I've watched him junior high to high school to going to the NCAA and absolutely lighting the world up on fire. I make a joke that I used to be the best wrestler from my hometown until he came in and he shattered all my records. And when the Oregon State job opened up, me and him were talking and he had said, hey, you know, you're perfect for this job. If you get this job, I'd like to work for you. And that is having somebody believe in you like that, having that you grew up with, that you trust, meant the world to me. I tell my athletes all the time, they are excited about getting on the mat with Isaiah, I'm like, have to tell them sometimes, you know, wrestling's a combat sport. Be careful what you wish for. And every single one of them says, oh yeah, no, he's not going to break me. He can't drag me into deep water. Well, I hope they can't, because that means I have a really good team. So I know there's going to be a line out the door of guys to wrestle him, and luckily Nate and I can kind of stand on the side. But no, we're still young enough. We get on the mat and roll around. And we're right now having a lot of conversations with for our volunteer position. But like I said from the get-go, this is a program that's going to be built on character and having coaches in place that are people that I want my athletes to be like. So I'm not feeling that much of a rush anymore to hire that volunteer position. We eventually will.
Well, congratulations on those, what sounds like outstanding hires. We look forward to getting to know both of them in the days ahead. Coach Strobel, I wanted to bring you on for a moment. I know that when Coach Pendleton talks about his hometown of Lemoore, he describes it as a blue-collar town. And he's a blue-collar guy and a hard-working guy, population about 25,000. When we talk about small towns, blue-collar, hard-working, I mean, you're from Scappoose, your hero, Jess Lewis from Almsville. I mean, you know of small town and you know of work ethic. And I'm just wondering, when you came out of Scappoose to come to Oregon State and, in a sense, follow in the footsteps of your hero, Jess Lewis, just what all of that meant to you then, what it still means to you now.
Well, Lemoore would be big at 25,000. Scappoose was like 900 when I lived there. It was a AA school and 110 kids in my graduating class. But I really admired Jess Lewis. When I remember coming down when I was in high school to watch a match and watch Jess Lewis pin the kid from Oregon. It's like, this is it. I got to go there. And of course, I recruited by everybody in the nation because I was a pretty good student actually coming out of high school, which is a good thing. In junior high, I had vice principal grab me by the ear, literally grab me by the ear and said, what are you doing? I said, nothing. He goes, I know, nothing. Pay attention in class. You'll get good grades. You can go to college anywhere you want to go. And nobody in my family had ever gone to college. And so I was the first one. In going to Oregon State, what sold me on it, Dale Thomas, the great recruiter that he was, right? I went back, by the way, Chris, I went back to Oklahoma State and got recruited by Tommy Chesbro, and I went to Iowa and Iowa State, all those other schools. But Dale Thomas came up and had breakfast with me and said, so what are you thinking? And I said, I've looked at the team and I don't want to wrestle against them. I'd rather wrestle with them in the room because they were that good. And I mean, I got beat all the time in the room by my teammates. Jim Crumley, Jim Hagan, they beat me regularly. Mike Jones even moved up to beat me. He was a 158 pounder. I was undefeated for 2 straight years. I got beat every week in the room.
Yeah.
So that's what you need, is a good room like that. And I said to Dale Thomas, I don't want to wrestle against them. I want to wrestle for them, with them. Because if I can beat them, I can beat anybody in the nation. And Thomas was rough, gruff, tough, but fair. And I like that. And the one thing that he did for me that was crucial, I came out of high school painfully shy, I call it. And my wife said, no, there's no way you're shy. And I go, no, I was painfully shy. And Dale Thomas told me, Greg, if you're going to make it in this world, you got to be able to talk. You have to be able to express yourself. And he forced me to talk to groups. It started with the wrestlers. Then it moved to being a speaker at a banquet. And the most scared thing I ever did in college was my junior year, he had me talk to a faculty group. Boy, that's scary. These are the guys that are teaching. And I had to stand there and give them a speech. And that right there changed my life, because I could talk to anybody, and I could interview, I could do stuff. And I became more gregarious because I was painfully shy. So he really helped me a lot with that. And then because of that, I became a wrestling coach. I didn't plan to be a wrestling coach. My dad was a carpenter. I was going to be a carpenter. And I fell in love with coaching. And I found out that I had a gift for teaching and I had a gift for coaching. And God blessed me with this ability to coach. And I've enjoyed a phenomenal career as a result of it. So no regrets. I've enjoyed my time. And now I'm enjoying giving back. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that's great. Isn't that a great story, Chris? I mean, I know you hear that, brings a smile to your face to hear about. That was something I had read that Dale forced a little, forced Greg out of his comfort zone a little bit to stand in front of people and talk. He does it beautifully now. Is that part of it? As you're coaching guys and recruiting guys, you have, each person's different. You find ways to challenge each individual to be better than they think they could be.
Oh, 100%. Real change, growth is painful. I mean, that's just the fact of life. Getting outside our comfort zone, whether it's as an athlete, as the social aspect or the academic aspect. If you guys, once you get to know me in person, you'll find out I am a quiet guy. I am a shy guy. I was telling my assistant coaches, I was like, I cannot be more thankful you guys are here, because now I don't have to do all the interviews anymore. But it's been making me, because I talk about things and do the interviews and sell people not only on myself but the vision, the more concrete it becomes and the better it just starts sounding. And it is something like Coach Strobel was talking about with my athletes. I don't want to name names, but I have a kid on the team. This kid is good. I know he's good. I've coached against him. I recruited him. I've scouted him, studied him, and we're talking about everything. And he's in a very challenging major, and he's got about a 2.8. And I was looking at him, and I was just telling him that I know that if you made a C in this class, you're going to get your degree. And it's a good degree. You're going to get a good job. But this degree is why you're on the bubble of being an All-American. If you change that mindset to chasing that degree, to not settle just to get your degree, your wrestling is going to be better. I promise him, if he made these markers that I put in place for him, I wouldn't be shocked if he's an All-American. I'm not going to put too much pressure on him because, end of the day, I'm proud of him and excited for him and to get to know him better. But I also believe he's got that potential, and there's nothing wrong with a little pressure. Pressure is a privilege, because when people don't think that you're good, then you have a problem.
Let's close, guys, with just a little bit on the wrestling style and approach that you favor. And Greg, I'll have you talk about it first a little bit, because that, for all of these big picture things and the stuff off the mat, huge, more important in the long run in the big picture, but the stuff the stuff on the mat and the style of coaching and the approach that you believe Chris is going to bring, that maybe also when you say, I know he's what Oregon State needs, what about just the pure wrestling part of it itself?
Well, that's part of the interview process too, because we asked Chris the questions. When people leave the gym after, or leave the Gill Coliseum after watching the match, what are they going to think? And he wants it the same thing that we want. We want them to leave going, wow, that was a heck of a match. We want those kids to go out there, be aggressive, and score points. You score points, it's exciting. And as I told my teams, it's called the wrestling team, not the weight cutting team, not the stalling team. It's the wrestling team. The team that scores the points wins. And I liked, with my guys, exciting style of wrestling. Anything you can do to score points is a good thing. And so you're shooting takedowns, you're throwing people, you're scoring points. And if you're active and wrestling, that's fun to watch. If you're standing there and stalling, that's not fun to watch. Wrestling can be extremely exciting, and wrestling can be like watching paint dry. I'd rather watch something exciting. And I think Chris is the same way.
You know, and just some of the atmosphere, you talk about the meets and that you've been around in the Midwest and in the East, like rock concerts, the excitement of a meet can be like that, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's nothing like going to, and I'm an officials evaluator. There is nothing like going to, and I've been there. 2 years ago, I was the evaluator for the Penn State Iowa match in Bryce, Jordan, sellout crowd, 15,000 people, raised mat, smoke and mirrors and the whole bit. It was like being at a rock concert. That's what we want at Oregon State.
Hey, Greg, thank you. Thanks so much for being on. Chris, I want to bring you back in before we transition and welcome in a volleyball player and get back with Coach Barnard. But just, Chris, a final thought just from you on the style that Greg just talked about that you want to bring to Oregon State wrestling, your approach as a coach.
I come from a very offensive-based coaching background from my college coach, John Smith, who is a 6-time World Olympic champion. He has put that mindset in me. Go out and take it. If you really want something, don't hope it happens. Go out and take it. And one of the things that I'm stressing to the athletes, and I know the coaches believe the same way, is getting rid of the myth of failure. There's a lot of talk about failure. It's non-existent. If you go out and these kids go out and actually go and try and go in, just like we talked about, go out and take it, then I'm not ever going to be upset with them. It's like Coach Strobel said, is when they are people get fear of that failure and they tighten up and they tense up and they hope it happens. That's when it gets boring. That's when it's not fun. That's when it's not exciting. So we've just been stressing that on every meeting is just embrace the failure. The number one trait of an NCAA champion is grit. And I truly believe that. You have to be gritty in this sport to win. And grit is developed through repeated successful failures, because there are such a thing as successful failures. If I have a kid that's going out against a defending NCAA champion and he lets it fly, I'm going to give him a big hug when he gets off the mat, because now we can get back to work. Now we can figure out how to fine tune and get better. So that's kind of my coaching philosophy in a condensed version.
Well, we look forward to finding out a lot more of it, watching it in action. Congratulations, Chris, on being hired here through that unique process, on your new staff hires. And thank you for taking time for us on this virtual state tour and for bringing Coach Strobel in tonight. It was a real delight to get to spend some time with you here. We look forward to watching you build a special program at Oregon State. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Thank you for having me. Mark, really nice meeting you. Can't wait to shake your hand in person. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Coach. Hey, Mark, we're going to bring in one of your rising seniors, senior to be, here in a moment in Haley. But just a quick thought, Mark, listening to two legends on the mat. I don't know how much you wrestled, but Coach Pendleton's right. Everybody's wrestled at some point. But just to hear those two guys talk gets you kind of fired up, I would think.
Yeah, it's pretty an interesting history. And, wrestling, when I grew up anyhow, didn't have a big culture in it being a sport. It was maybe something on a Friday night outside a bar, maybe. But, it wasn't, not that I was involved in that.
Of course not.
I heard about things like that, but
Right.
there wasn't that culture. But to listen to Chris and Greg and, just the history of that program has had here is quite a story. And I'm sure with the characters that were involved in wrestling, there'd be way more stories than that. But it was educational for me. So
yeah, me too.
Hopefully for everyone else as well.
Absolutely. Looking forward to talking more with, in fact, hope to have, I'm just going to throw it out there, hope to have Greg Strobel on our local radio show soon, because there's so many stories about the legendary Dale Thomas I'd love to hear more about. It is a pleasure to welcome in as our final pop-in guest, and it's nice to have a local person in a very real sense and with ties to the program. Haley Bennett joins us. Her mom competed for the Beavers 87 through 90 and the volleyball team at Oregon State. Haley, good evening. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us. How's everything going in your world tonight and over these last 10 weeks or so?
Yeah, it's definitely been an adjustment, but we're working, we're learning as we go, and so far things are good.
Where are you coming to us from?
Right now I'm in California, but before this I was staying at my apartment in Corvallis.
Okay, because that may explain the only reason. It looks like I see something. You might have to block out the background. I don't know why I'm seeing an O up there. It's not the right kind of O, and I don't know who's responsible for that, but it worries me a little bit.
It's not mine. That's all that matters.
Okay,
Don't worry, Mike. She's off the team.
No, I know.
She's finished now.
Hey,
Sorry,
Mark, I'm not wrong. You saw that too, didn't you?
Yeah.
I did. I hope I recover.
We're all going to try to do that, Haley. Hey, Haley, thank you. No big deal. One thing I did, maybe this answers the question, because, Jason Amberg recently asked you kind of a Q&A, how are you handling time during the quarantine and working out? And you talked about playing some sand volleyball, beach volleyball, sand courts. And I was sort of wondering where you were doing that. So is that happening for you in California somewhere now?
No, we did that up in Corvallis at one of the apartment complexes has their own sand court, and so we got together with a few of us who were still in town and did the best we could of forming teams to play some sand volleyball.
So it's a challenge for everybody. I've been reading some of those Q&As with your teammates. Mary Kate Lopez says she's running football stadium stairs. I think she also said she's learning how to bake bread and watching Outer Banks on Netflix. Chloe Brown tried baking, lost cause for her, she says. What are some of the things you're kind of spending your time in, maybe that something new or different that you wouldn't be normally doing, but you're learning some things this time of year?
I've also watched Outer Banks. I've started doing a lot more yoga, so I've kind of gotten into yoga and trying that. Beach is very new to me. I didn't play beach like growing up in high school and things like that, so that's definitely a new hobby that I've learned to really love in this quarantine, and now it's like one of my favorite things to do, which I never would have thought playing beach volleyball would be something that I like doing in my free time, but I do.
Cool. Coach Barnard, the translation of the skill set in beach to the world that she'll be in when the season begins, we all believe it will take place in her senior year. But Coach Barnard, what's your take on beach volleyball and I guess the translatable skills for Haley to be spending some time with that?
Well, I think that there are some translatable skills for sure. One of the things is from a non-technical aspect, there's two people on the court. So you touch the ball a lot more often in beach volleyball. So it's definitely good for your ability to control the ball a little bit more because you have to. And if you can't control the ball, the other team will put it to you. So, it forces a little bit of that onto you as well. Passing the ball is the same, settings reasonably similar. Jumping is different because you're jumping out of sand, so you don't get that resistance from the floor. So, usually going from sand back to indoor takes a little adjustment with the timing of the jump. But, there's a lot of translatable skills. The fact that you're just touching and playing volleyball, I think, is a big plus overall. Yeah. And it's a growing sport in college, for sure. It's definitely taken off from its kind of emerging status of 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And certainly the Pac-12, which is the kind of the climate, maybe Oregon not so much, but certainly the California schools and so on have really embraced it.
Yeah. Well, Haley, thank you for sharing that with us. You also, I read in Jason's Q&A, Outer Banks, yes, but you've binge watch Criminal Minds. How's that going for? I've never seen the show. Why did that hook you in?
Well, my mom used to watch it a lot when I was like in high school and living at home, and then I had seen a bunch like randomly out of order, but I knew I really liked the show, and I was finally like, I want to watch all these in order and kind of figure out what is actually going on. So then I just watched them all, and I finished all of them on Netflix.
Nice. I also read that you bought a new book. So it's not just binge TV, you're reading some too. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I do like reading.
Good for you. And Zoom classes. I mean, you got to keep that going. How's that been going for you?
That's definitely been an adjustment too. It's kind of weird being on lecture classes all online and all remote, but once you just figured out the routine for it, and it's easy to fall behind, I think, with the online classes just because there's like less of a strict schedule. So you got to kind of do your own thing. But once you figure out that routine, it's definitely a lot easier to manage.
Haley, I wanted to ask you, and I'll bring Coach Barnard in too. As a redshirt freshman in 2017, you guys break through and go to the NCAA tournament. The team's been hit with some tough injury situations the last couple of years. But what's your excitement level for what's ahead of you when you think about some of the new talent, 2 Gatorade players of the year from the state of Oregon, one, another from New York, returning players coming, health returning. What's your excitement level for your senior year?
I'm really excited. I think that this year is going to be super great and awesome. I think we have a good level of leadership across the team, not just from the captain's perspective, but from other players as well. And I think that the incomers are going to, they're going to put up a fight for those starting spots, which I think is going to make fall camp a lot more competitive and make people really like bring out the best play in each other.
Coach, I want to bring you in, Mark. What about that? You go to the tournament in 17 and looking forward to building off that. Injuries have hit in a big way. But do you feel like with the 2 Gatorade players I referred to, one from New York and the other from Oregon, congratulations on that, but there's got to be some excitement level for what's ahead for you as the head coach.
Oh, most certainly, and it was funny because 3 or 4 years ago, Cal were very strong and they had this horrendous injury toll, and I thought, wow, I'm glad that's never really happened to us. Well, I guess I spoke a little too soon. But one of the positives, it's enabled some other players to step up that maybe wouldn't have had an opportunity prior to that. And so what we've got this year, however, is a level of depth of quality in each of the positions that we maybe haven't had in the past. And I think that, that gives us a little bit of leeway. And with the addition of a new assistant coach and a possible couple of overseas recruits as well, I really think we have a much stronger roster as opposed to just a strong 6 or 7 players. And, our key people are Haley, Madison Goings, and also Grace Massey. So our 3 senior players, we're going to ride on their back a lot this year, but they've proven over the last few years that they can get it done. And I think that extra impetus of their senior year will get a little bit extra out of them.
Tell us about the 2 players from the state of Oregon, the Gatorade Player of the Year, and Izzy Shulchuski. I hope that's right. I mean, I've been practicing, but she comes to you from right here in the Beaver State. But then another Gatorade Player of the Year, Michael Vernon from New York. Ossipee, New York. I'd never really heard of it. How did you get a track on her? But then also just those 2 players. Tell us how excited you are to bring them into the program.
They will both vie seriously for starting positions straight away. That's something that's a big benefit of bringing a freshman in at that level. We just the thing with volleyball is there's this 6-month period of recruiting. There's so many tournaments on. There's so many club teams that travel, and we were just at tournaments and we saw Michael Vernon from New York, and she visited here and she wanted an experience in college that took her well beyond that side of the country, and so I think we appealed to her in that way. And she just loved the visit she had here. She loved the town of Corvallis and the team. And she just said she felt as far away from home as she was, as home as she could be in regard to coming to a university. And so I think, a lot of recruiting stories are based around there's this gut feel they have. Yeah. And she had that. And it's, we haven't had a New Yorker before. So we've got quite a bit of a variety. So, of course, she's coming from a coronavirus hotspot, so we've got to work out how we can get her here, when we can get her here, and how we get all that going. So we've got a few little bumps in the road, but hey, a couple of very good acquisitions. I think they can make a big difference with this program.
And what about Izzy specifically that just jumped out at you, that it makes you just excited that she's cast her lot with your program at Oregon State?
Well, you wait till you see her play. She is an athlete, number one. She is a great team player, and you got to really see it to kind of pick up on it. But she has a great demeanor on the court. She makes the team around her significantly better, and I think that's in the setting role. It's a tough position to play, but she's got the right demeanor to do that, and she wants to compete at the highest possible level, and she can. And she's only 5'8", but like I said, she's a little different. You'll see something out of her. She's a true athlete.
You mentioned the assistant coach, and I'm curious about kind of how you and Anna Kristenko connected, how that happened. She comes with a tremendous international experience, and when you talk about broadening, maybe your recruiting because of her and her presence, tell us a little bit about Anna's hiring and what she brings to the program.
Well, Anna was a true, I didn't know she existed person prior to, well, I shouldn't say I didn't know she existed, was not aware of her coaching pedigree at all. She was recommended by a few coaches that I look up to, and so we interviewed, and she did a fantastic job when she was here. And she's been noted as an excellent recruiter in Europe. She was born in Russia, later Crimea, that became part of Ukraine. Quite a long story there, but and she played internationally there, and she still maintains incredibly strong ties there. And Russ Rose, who's the head coach of the Penn State team that's won 6 or 7 national championships in the time he's been there, said, look, I think she's a pretty good coach. I watched her. It's hard to say. She's an assistant coach, but he said, I'll tell you one thing. As soon as she left there and the other coach left there, he said, I went after a couple of players that she recruited straight away. And he said, so if nothing else, you can bolster your roster. So, so all of these things started to add up over time. And then, just really in the end, when you interview somebody, and Greg and Chris were talking about it earlier, you know what their credentials are, where they've been and what they've done. It's really, hey, can they make a difference here? Can I work with them every day, and are they going to make a difference, a positive difference to this team? And we had Haley in, we had some of the senior players, plus Nia Buckner, in on all the interviews as well. We wanted the player feedback on what they felt would really work for them. So I think we, all in all, made a great decision. And Anna, once again, she's from the East Coast, so she comes here. She's got to do a time quarantine a little bit, I guess, and then get going probably early June to mid-June.
Yeah, she's the international experience, yes, but she's coached at Florida State, at Rutgers, and so knows this territory. But out here it'll be a little bit new, but the ties are invaluable. I wanted to bring Haley back in for a moment. Haley, as a leader on the team, and Coach Barnard said you were part of interacting with potential coaches that would join the staff. How much does that make you give you ownership in a program to know that you're kind of trusted to have a voice in that process?
Yeah, I think it means a lot. It's like a lot of trust to put in your players to make that decision, especially trying to fill Ron's shoes because he was such a great coach and such a good player. So we knew that we had to make a good decision for this program. And I just know that like me, Grace, and Maddie and I are all like very invested in this program, and we want what's best. So we knew that going into these interviews, and all the candidates were super awesome and really great, but we just knew that Anna felt the best fit for this position, and we liked what she had to offer.
I want to close a little bit more with you. We're our last few minutes on all of these virtual state tours we've been doing, because you, Haley, and the student athlete experience, I know Mark and all the coaches we talk about, this is you and the student athletes are what this is all about. I'm just wondering if you could articulate for us a little bit, Haley. Michael Vernon's coming from New York. People are coming, people have come from Australia and so on to the program. You come from Philomath. You're a hometown person who grew up with the program. But even so, even if there's a familiarity to it and all of that, what is the experience at your hometown university where your mom went and played? What's it meant to you, the life experiences, the things you've gotten out being in school at Oregon State?
I've loved every moment of it. I've loved being able to fill my mom's shoes and follow after her. I've loved the people that I've met here and the connections that I've formed. And I think that like being able to pull so many people from across the country just shows how like adaptable and how lovable Corvallis and Oregon State is as a college campus. And I think that like as soon as you step foot on campus as a student athlete, it's just like this different kind of wave of emotion that you get, and you can just like feel all the support from the fans, and the fan base in Corvallis is unlike any other Pac-12 school. Like traveling and seeing all the different schools, I can definitely say that Corvallis has like the best fan base, and it's just been super awesome having that in my backyard basically.
And you've been able to experience as a student athlete here. I know it's a special part of the Beaver program, but the Beavers Without Borders trip, you got to go to the Dominican Republic a couple of years ago. How much did that mean to you as a life experience?
That trip was life-changing. It was incredible. It was everything I could have ever dreamed of, and then a little bit more. I just think that I believe that traveling is a super important thing to like develop yourself as a person, and that definitely did that for me. And being able to see how people in different countries that have less than we have are able to live and survive and make those connections despite the language barrier and different things like that. And those are some of like the memories and things that I'll just never forget.
And finally, academically, you're describing your academic discipline may take the rest of the show, but majoring in kinesiology with an option in pre-therapy and allied health and a minor in public health, that's a lot. I don't know, but all of that means, Haley, you're working towards what ultimately? What's your ultimate goal? Do you know that yet in terms of what you want to do professionally?
Yeah, I would like to go into the nursing program. I'm not sure where yet, but that's the end goal, is to be a nurse.
To be a nurse, and specifically I read a labor and delivery nurse. Is that kind of what you're thinking of right now?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. How so? What drew you to that?
In high school, I took a health occupations class, and I was able to job shadow a bunch of different health occupations, and one of them was a labor and delivery nurse. And after that day, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. I love it here. And so from then on, that's kind of been the dream.
Well, congratulations on that. And Haley, thank you for taking some time for us. Thank you for strategically shifting just a little bit, because the background has been, it's been a beautiful thing here these last few minutes. So thank you, Haley. Haley, thank you for being our last guest amongst the student athletes on the virtual state tour. Hope to see you back on campus and back in town very soon. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Coach, Mark Barnard, you're going to get the last word here on this virtual state tour, because what I said is it's not lip service. What she is what it's all about. It's what this whole mission for all 16 coaches at Oregon State and all of these programs, she represents what she just articulated, what this whole thing's all about.
Oh, absolutely. There's your kind of poster child for exactly what it's about. And, you know, the thing that Haley doesn't mention is that she will have an opportunity to play professionally in Europe as well after the season's over. So she's got a lot of strings to her bow, and she's a great person. And in the end, she'll be judged on that. Once she leaves here and she starts working or playing professionally, she'll be judged on what she's like as a person. And I think in the years she's developed here, she's just she's an outstanding young woman in all aspects, social, academic, sporting. So that's you can't ask for any more than that when you're coaching. So she's a key part of our success, and she has been for the last few years. So I look forward to this next year.
We do too. We're looking forward to this next year, whatever form it's going to take, however it's going to look. We all look forward to it, right? That's the probably the best way to close is we look forward to 2020 somehow.
It'll be something, and I just urge all the Beaver faithful out there just to get along as much as you can. You feel comfortable with the student athletes will be giving as much as they would have with normal seasons, with full preparation as this season, where they may have a lot shorter preparation, shorter seasons. You're still going to see that intensity and Beaver pride that you see all the time.
Mark, thank you for being here and helping us close out this state tour. Great job, and thanks, Coach, for being with us.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for having me on. Go Beavs.
Mark Barnard. And folks, that's going to wrap it up. It has been, it's been a unique couple of weeks in these 6 different virtual Beaver State Tour stops. Again, thanks to everybody for joining us along the way. Hope you've enjoyed the interaction with all of the head coaches. It makes us all excited again just to see all of these sports, these student athletes and coaches at work. And it's going to happen again, as Mark just said. And we believe that there's great days ahead on the court, on the pitch, on the mat, on the baseball field, on the gridiron, on the track. All of these things are coming back, and we look forward to when that day indeed returns to us. We see how special it all is. We miss it and look forward to being back together as a Beaver Nation at the events. Thank you in the meantime for joining us. Hope that your continued time through this unique time, that you get through it well, safe, and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you back again at another future Beaver event. This is Mike Parker. Thanks for joining us. Go Beavs, and so long, everybody.